Hey guys, tonight we're going to step back, way back, into a quieter time. Imagine, if you will, that you are standing on a dusty track in a small English village, sometime around the year 1680. The air is surprisingly still, but not silent. You're waiting, patiently, for the very first whispers of a new day to emerge from the lingering pre-dawn darkness. The stars are still pricking through the inky black, but there's a subtle lightening on the horizon, a promise of light that will soon sweep away the shadows. Before long, you'll find yourself amidst the surprisingly varied symphony of rural life, a gentle hum that will, I hope, lull you into a deep and peaceful slumber. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. As the faintest sliver of gray begins to creep over the distant, tree-lined hills, the very first sounds to greet you aren't human. No, the 17th century alarm clock was far more feathery. You hear it now, that tentative, almost shy cock-a-doodle-doo from a rooster, quickly joined by another, and then another, until a cacophony of crowing echoes across the slumbering village. It's not quite the aggressive clarion call you might expect from a modern farm, but rather a slightly muffled, distant chorus, as if they too are still shaking off sleep. You might notice, too, the rustling in the hedgerows as small birds, perhaps a robin or a wren, begin their early morning chirps, warming up their tiny vocal cords before the full avian orchestra kicks in. It's a gentle awakening, a slow, natural unfolding of the day. You can almost feel the chill of the pre-dawn air, even through your surprisingly thin woolens. The smell of damp earth and perhaps a faint wisp of wood smoke, hinting at the first fires being stoked, drifts to you. The village itself is a collection of timber-framed cottages, their thatch roofs still dark against the paling sky. There are no streetlights, of course, just the moon if it's out, or utter darkness. So your ears become your primary guide. You might hear the distant, rhythmic clop-clop-clop of hooves on a dirt road, an early traveler or a farmer heading to market before the sun fully crests the horizon. It's a slow, steady sound, often accompanied by the subtle jingle of a bridle. It's certainly a less jarring start to the day than your average Monday morning alarm clock, isn't it? Though I suppose, if you were a peasant farmer, your own internal alarm clock, set by the demands of the sun and your livestock, would be far more insistent. The next sounds you discern are the muffled stirrings within the cottages. A floorboard creaks underfoot in a nearby dwelling, a low murmur of voices, perhaps a cough or a yawn. You might hear the faint clink of a bucket being placed on a stone floor, or the rhythmic thump-thump of someone kneading bread dough, even at this early hour. Baking was a serious business, often started before dawn to have fresh loaves ready for the day. This early morning activity wasn't just for warmth or sustenance. It was a fundamental rhythm of life. Historians still debate whether the 17th century village truly slept through the night in the way we do, or if periods of first sleep and second sleep, broken by an hour or two of waking activity, were more common. Imagine waking up at 2 a.m. just to tend to the fire and perhaps tell a story or two before drifting off again. Sounds rather cozy, if you ask me, certainly better than scrolling through social media. As the sky brightens to a soft lavender and then a pale gold, the sounds become more defined. You hear the rhythmic swish-swish of a broom sweeping a dirt floor, or the distant creak of a well pulley as someone draws water, the bucket splashing softly as it hits the surface of the water. The lowing of cattle, still somewhat muffled from inside their barns, adds to the growing chorus. A dog might let out a single sleepy bark, quickly stifled. The air itself seems to begin to hum with a subtle energy. The occasional distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer, already at work on a repair, might carry on the crisp morning air, a testament to the fact that some trades were truly an all-day, everyday affair. You won't hear any cars, no airplanes overhead, just the organic, earthy sounds of a world waking up much as it had for centuries. It's a remarkably unhurried pace, a stark contrast to our modern hustle. You can almost feel the quiet resilience in the very fabric of the day, woven into these unassuming, everyday sounds. As the sun begins its slow ascent, casting longer shadows across the dew-kissed grass, the village truly begins to awaken. The sounds shift, becoming less individual whispers and more a collective murmur, like a beehive slowly rousing. You find yourself drawn towards the central square, or what passes for it, often just a wider patch of ground near the church or the largest public house. Here, the hum of activity grows. The rhythmic clatter and clang of the blacksmith's forge becomes more pronounced, a steady beat accompanying the rising sun. You can almost smell the hot metal and the faint whiff of coal smoke drifting on the morning air. He's not just shoeing horses. He's mending tools, repairing hinges, perhaps even crafting a new plowshare. His work is the backbone of the village's industry, a constant, reassuring presence. Then comes the arrival of the market folk. The sound of creaking cartwheels, laden with produce, eggs, and perhaps a squealing piglet or two, echoes down the lanes. The carts are often pulled by stout ponies or oxen, their heavy breathing adding to the earthy soundtrack. You'll hear the chatter of voices growing louder as villagers and farmers from outlying cottages begin to congregate, greeting each other with short, clipped phrases. It's a social hub, this market, far more than just a place to exchange goods. You might hear the distinctive caw-caw-caw of crows circling overhead, perhaps eyeing a dropped grain or two, adding their own raucous contribution to the symphony. Among the bustling sounds, you'd notice the specific calls of various tradesmen. The sharp, repetitive thwack of a cooper, shaping wooden barrels, his mallet hitting the bands with precision. Or the more delicate scritch-scratch of a scribe, perhaps in the church rectory, meticulously copying documents or recording village happenings. It's a slow, painstaking process, requiring immense concentration in a world devoid of instant communication. You can almost feel the deliberate pace, the lack of urgency that pervades these tasks. One quirky tidbit: some coopers would actually sing or hum to maintain their rhythm, their voices blending with the sounds of their craft. Imagine a 17th century work song, purely for barrel making. The air fills not just with sound, but with the distinct aromas of the day. Freshly baked bread from the communal oven, the earthy smell of livestock, the sweet scent of hay, and the fainter metallic tang from the forge. It's a rich tapestry for your senses. You might hear the occasional bleating of sheep being herded, or the deep moo of a cow, perhaps expressing its displeasure at being milked so early. Children, surprisingly quiet until now, begin to emerge, their soft footsteps and hushed giggles barely audible as they start their morning chores or begin their day's play. They often had small tasks from sunup, so their playful sounds were often interwoven with the mundane. However, historians still argue whether the apparent calm of these morning scenes truly reflects the underlying stresses of 17th century life. Was the market chatter truly light-hearted, or were people discussing the anxieties of harvests, taxes, or the latest rumors of plague? It's easy for us to romanticize the simple life, but survival was often a daily struggle. Yet for now, as you drift further into this historical soundscape, the dominant impression is one of gentle, methodical activity. The rhythm of life dictated by the sun, the seasons, and the tangible necessities of existence. You won't hear any frantic phone calls, no urgent deadlines, just the steady pulse of a community going about its business, one careful, measured sound at a time. It's the sound of resilience, of tradition, and of a world where every action had a clear, discernible purpose. As the morning wears on and the sun climbs higher, you feel the warmth begin to spread through the village. The sounds that now dominate are those echoing from within the homes themselves, a different kind of rhythm entirely. Step closer to one of the cottages, and you'll hear the gentle crackle and hiss from the hearth. where a fire meticulously maintained provides both warmth and the means for cooking. The smell of wood smoke is richer here, mingled with the savory promise of whatever is being prepared for the midday meal. Perhaps a simple pottage, simmering slowly in a cast-iron pot, its contents bubbling with a low, contented sound. You might catch the soft, repetitive thump-thump of a wooden pestle in a mortar, as herbs or grains are ground for cooking or for simple remedies. Medicine in the 17th century was often a household affair, relying on traditional knowledge and local plants. It's a sound of patient, deliberate effort, a stark contrast to the whir of a modern blender. Alongside this, there's the rhythmic clink-clink-clink of ceramic dishes or wooden bowls being set out, and the scrape of a spoon against a metal pan. These are the sounds of sustenance, the quiet preparations that ensure the family is fed. Listen closely, and you might distinguish the soft whir of a spinning wheel, a constant backdrop in many homes. Women and girls would spend countless hours spinning wool or flax into thread, a vital part of the household economy. It's a remarkably soothing sound, a testament to steady, repetitive work. You might even hear the gentle thwack-thwack of a loom. If a family member is weaving cloth, though that's a less common sound than the spinning wheel, given the complexity and size of a loom. These weren't hobbies. They were essential for clothing the family and providing goods for trade. It's enough to make you appreciate your modern, pre-made wardrobe, isn't it? No need to card your own wool or dye your own fabrics. Beyond the work, there are the sounds of family life. A baby's soft gurgle, quickly followed by a parent's low, comforting hum. The gentle murmur of conversation, often hushed, perhaps due to the small, close quarters of the cottage or simply the ingrained habit of a less boisterous age. Children, when not assisting with chores, might be playing with simple wooden toys, their muted thuds and rolls heard against the earthen floor. There's no blaring music or electronic screens here, just the organic sounds of human interaction and basic play. One fascinating tidbit is how even privacy had its own sound. With thin walls and often multiple generations living under one roof, true quiet was rare. Instead, people often developed a keen ear for discerning meaning from subtle shifts in the absence of sound, or the specific pitch of a whisper. Historians still argue whether this constant proximity fostered stronger familial bonds or led to greater tensions. You probably wouldn't survive a day without your noise-canceling headphones, would you? But in the 17th century, the domestic soundscape was a constant, interwoven presence, a gentle reminder that you were rarely truly alone. The comfort came from the shared rhythm, the understanding that everyone around you was also engaged in the slow, persistent tasks of simply being. Leaving the immediate vicinity of the cottages, you begin to perceive the broader, more expansive sounds of the surrounding fields and farmsteads. The earlier individual animal calls now blend into a consistent background chorus, a testament to the fact that agriculture was the very heartbeat of this 17th century village. You hear the distant, yet persistent, muffled thudding of a flail hitting grain on a threshing floor. It's a rhythmic, almost hypnotic sound, signifying the laborious process of separating the valuable kernels from the stalks. This wasn't a quick, machine-driven process. It was back-breaking, repetitive work, often continuing for hours. Imagine the sheer physical effort, the dust, and the steady, unwavering beat that would accompany a farmer's day. Further out, you might discern the slow, heavy plod of oxen pulling a plow through the earth, the creak of the wooden implement against the soil, and the soft, snuffing sounds of the animals themselves. There's a raw, primal feel to this soundscape, connecting you directly to the land and its demands. You'd likely hear the distant baying of sheep as they graze in a pasture, their calls carried on the gentle breeze, sometimes interspersed with the sharp, insistent bark of a sheepdog, guiding the flock with remarkable efficiency. These aren't the pampered pets of today, but working animals, their sounds intrinsically linked to the daily survival of the community. The wind itself plays a role in this outdoor symphony, rustling through the tall grass in the fields, whispering through the leaves of the oak trees that dot the landscape. It adds a soft, ever-present layer of white noise. You might even hear the gentle whoosh of a scarecrow's tattered clothes flapping in a stronger gust, a subtle reminder of the ongoing battle against nature's smaller winged inhabitants. It's an immersive experience, this quiet dominion of nature, where human sounds are often woven into the natural world rather than dominating it. Occasionally, a louder, more direct sound will punctuate the calm. Perhaps the sharp crack of an axe as a woodcutter fells a tree or splits logs for firewood, followed by the splintering sound of wood giving way. This isn't a constant sound, but an important one, as wood was the primary fuel source for warmth and cooking. Or you might hear the distant thwip of a fishing net being cast into a nearby stream or pond, followed by the soft splash as it settles into the water. Every sound has a purpose, a direct link to a task essential for daily life. One peculiar detail is the role of birds as natural pest control. Farmers would often encourage certain bird species, whose calls would then become an integral part of the workday soundtrack, particularly during planting and harvest. Historians still argue whether the varied biodiversity of 17th century rural landscapes contributed to a more robust, natural soundscape than what we experience today, or if the sheer constant physical labor simply drowned out finer distinctions. Either way, you wouldn't find much need for an agricultural podcast back then. The sounds themselves told the story of the land. It's a rhythm dictated by sunlight and seasons, a constant, low thrum of human effort intertwined with the timeless sounds of the natural world. As the sun begins its slow descent, painting the western sky in hues of orange and purple, the sounds of the 17th century English village soften, becoming less distinct and more diffused. The sharp edges of the day's activities begin to blur, replaced by a gentle, settling quiet. The distant clanging of the blacksmith's hammer fades, replaced by perhaps a final lingering tap, a craftsman tidying his tools. The chatter from the market square diminishes to a low hum, then silence, as stalls are packed away and villagers retreat to their homes. You might catch the very last creak of a cartwheel as a farmer heads back to his distant homestead, the sound slowly fading into the twilight. The smells of the day, too, begin to mellow. The sharp scent of wood smoke from morning fires settles into a comforting, earthy aroma. The raw smells of livestock are less prominent, replaced by the sweeter, damp scent of evening dew on grass. This is the time when the domestic sounds, which were woven into the midday bustle, now take center stage again, but with a different cadence. You might hear the soft scrape of a wooden spoon against a bowl as a final meal is prepared, or the gentle clink of a pewter mug being set down. The sounds are less about production and more about winding down, about comfort and preparation for rest. The sounds of children, which might have been hushed giggles earlier, become the low, murmuring voices of bedtime stories, or perhaps the soft, rhythmic creak of a wooden cradle being rocked. There's a noticeable slowing of pace, a collective exhalation from the entire village. You might hear the gentle closing of a wooden door, the soft click of a simple latch, as families seal themselves into their homes for the night. There's no bright electric light spilling from windows, just the warm, flickering glow of candles or the dying embers of a hearth, casting dancing shadows. Outside, the natural world begins its evening performance. The chirp of crickets becomes more pronounced, a steady, rhythmic pulse that seems to weave itself into the very fabric of the fading light. The hoot of an owl might carry from the distant woods, a sound both majestic and a little eerie in the encroaching darkness. You might even hear the rustle of a hedgehog moving through the undergrowth, foraging for its evening meal. These sounds are wilder, less human, a reminder that beyond the small circle of the village, nature holds sway. Historians still debate the true level of fear that permeated these nights. Were the sounds of the wild comforting, Or did they harbor worries of unseen dangers? One quirky tidbit: some villagers would tell tales around the fire, specifically designed to explain certain night sounds, like the wind howling as the cries of lost spirits, adding a layer of folklore to the natural world. But for now, as you let these sounds wash over you, there is only peace. The final soft pop of a dwindling fire, a last exhalation of warmth. The quiet settling of a world preparing for sleep. The absence of jarring noises is profound, leaving only the gentle, persistent hum of life itself.